all-inclusive vacations make life easy with endless eats, bottomless drinks, and never-ending fun. So booking an all-inclusive vacation should be easy too, right? That's where Apple Vacations comes in. Book your all-inclusive getaway with Apple Vacations and receive exclusive perks at select resorts. You'll find the best deals to Hyatt, Zilara, Riviera Maya in Mexico and enjoy a selection of exclusive nonstop vacation flights. Turn on easy mode at applevacations.com or call your local travel advisor to get started. Visit applevacations.com or call your local travel advisor to get started.
The NFL's back, and there's no better way to stay up to date on the latest from around the league than listening to the Around the NFL podcast. Join me, Dan Hanzus, and my buds, Mark Sessler and Greg Rosenthal, for the latest football news with a dash of mirth.
We are three guys embarking on our 11th season together. 11 seasons, can't be wrong. Come along for the ride.
Fresh content almost every day, all season long.
Listen to Around the NFL on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Brought to you by the first ever Toyota Grand Highlander.
It's time to get inside the Giants Huddle.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
On Giants.com.
I like it, I like it.
And the Giants mobile app.
Boom, give me some juice.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's roll.
Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. I'm John Schmeelk, joined by Paul Dottino. Our guest today on the Giants Huddle podcast is former Giants offensive coordinator, former offensive coordinator for a lot of places, former Notre Dame head coach, go down the list, Super Bowl champion, Charlie Weis. Charlie, how are you?
I was never the offensive coordinator for the Giants, though. So
he gave you promotion, running backs coach.
I would coach running backs.
I'm too young. That's the problem. I should have let Paul do the intro.
My first year in the league was Super Bowl 25. I started as the assistant special teams coach and basically defensive quality control. So I was working with Belichick and Groh and Romeo and Mike Schwetman, and I was the bottom feeder, and then the next year after Bill left and Ray took over, I flipped over from defense to offense and coached the running backs for the next couple of years.
Obviously, longtime offensive coordinator for the Patriots, won multiple Super Bowls, obviously, and also host on Sirius XM NFL Radio with the voice of the Giants, Bob Pop, as well.
Yeah, he's the best to work with, and I know that you guys have gotten spoiled from having him for so long, but he makes my day go so much easier because you know about chemistry in this business. If you don't have chemistry, it just doesn't work, and he just makes it so easy, so easy to do a show.
Charlie, it's all about being a Jersey guy. You know that.
Well, we talk about that all the time, and trust me, here's my biggest pet peeve. You represent the New York Giants that are in New Jersey. Okay, they play in New Jersey. They practice in New Jersey.
Here we go.
Their offices are in New Jersey, but they're called New York. You want to explain that one to me?
I think that's kind of before our era. I'm not sure we're the ones that made that decision.
That's beside the point. The Raiders are not called the Oakland Raiders, are they?
No, they're not.
Okay, well, I mean, it should be the New Jersey Giants. But
the Giants did start playing in the Polo Grounds, obviously, which was in New York, and I think that's probably where it came from. Your thought, generally speaking, Charlie, on this draft class, which is a pretty heavy offensive class compared to what we've seen the last couple of years?
Well, let me zero in on as it relates to the Giants.
Please.
Okay, so the Giants are in a very interesting situation because we all know they could use an offensive lineman. We all know that they could use a frontline wide receiver. Always could use help all over the place on defense. You always could do that. But realistically, you have such an interesting, talented group at quarterback. The dilemma you're going to have is what happens if one of those top three guys is there when you're picking number 6.
Which I think is unlikely, but you never know.
I don't know. Mm-hmm. I think they'll go 1, 2, and 3, but I don't know that. I have no idea. I do know that the Bears will play their hand here before free agency starts.
Yep.
Because if they're going to trade Justin Fields, it'll be. They've already said it'll be they'll have made that decision in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
So let's assume the Bears trade Justin Fields. Okay, let's assume because all the tea leaves are heading in that direction. Well, then they're taking a quarterback. Washington, they're taking a quarterback. The Patriots, they should take a quarterback. I don't know if they will or they won't. But I think that the third spot in the draft will probably take a quarterback. I just don't know if it'll be them. But let's say if it's not. Let's say they take Marvin Harrison Jr. And then let's say Arizona, well, they're not taking a quarterback. They got Kyler Murray, unless that online thing the other day saying he's our franchise quarterback was just bait, saying come and get him. But, okay, they're not taking a quarterback. So, I mean, you're already to pick 5. They're not taking a quarterback either unless there's a trade. So you could be sitting there. Now, this is not an anti-Daniel Jones comment. This is like, what do you do? Do you let one of those guys, if that guy's available? I happen to think Jaden Daniels was clearly the best player in college football this year.
He was excellent.
I'm not saying he's the number one prospect. I'm just saying he was the best college football player this year. And I watched him close because my kid's at Ole Miss. You know, and I mean, you want to go watch Jaden Daniels? Go watch the Ole Miss LSU game. Mm-hmm. It was 100-99. And on the last play, Ole Miss win. The good guys won, by the way. But even on the last play of the game, Jaden Daniels rolls to the right, scrambles back to the left, throws a ball to the end zone that hits the receiver. It's in the receiver's hands to win the game. I almost had a heart attack. I mean, that is the dilemma you have. And I'm glad that I'm not in that seat. But as a matter of fact, I got to interview Joe yesterday. And I said, look, I'm only going to ask you one question. And here was the one question. I said, because we had a 3-man team, I'm going to ask you one question. What are you doing with Saquon, part A? What are you doing with McKinney, part B? And then with the 6th pick of the draft, you trading up, you're trading back, or what are you taking if you stand pat? Other than that, I have no questions for you.
Okay, but what piece of advice would you have given him if one of those quarterbacks drops and you just said before the Giants have needs? Would you trade down?
Take him.
You would just take a QB?
Take him. Because it's proven in this league you can't win without him. You can't win without quarterback. And Daniels had a bunch of injuries now. Mm-hmm. We can say whatever we want, but he has had a bunch of injuries. So, I mean, until you know that he's going to be – you got spoiled with Eli. He played a zillion games in a row. Not only was he a good player and a great leader and a great role model citizen and all that other stuff, but he was durable. I got to coach Tommy. He was always, every day, he's there. You know, you don't have to worry about who's playing this week. It's going to be him.
You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Let me ask you something, Charlie, because you were around for it. Think about Phil Simms' first 5 years in this league. So many injuries, so many people said he was a bust, so many people said it would never amount to anything because he was always hurt. And then finally, what happened? 1984, you know, you're a Jersey guy, you know how it turned around for him. And now Phil is you know, one of the great Giants of all time. He was able to become more durable after several years of being sidelined.
I'm not saying that it can't happen. What I'm saying, I'm not saying it can't happen, but right now, until we have evidence, okay, that you've moved in that direction, then you better cover yourself, because how many teams have we seen in this league, and you can throw the Giants in there, that have gotten quarterback help because of injuries to the quarterback?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and you want your team to go down the tubes in a hurry? You know,
that'll do it.
That's the quickest way for it to happen.
Well, to your point, in terms of covering yourself at quarterback, let's say your original theory holds true. The first 3 picks are quarterbacks. None of those teams want to trade out. The Giants can't even trade up to get one of those guys because the Patriots, the Commanders, the Bears all decide we want to draft one of these guys. We're not moving. When you get to that second class of quarterbacks, would you be excited about drafting any one of those 3 if they get to the Giants in the second round? The Bo Nixes, the J.J. McCarthy's, the Michael Penixes. Do you think those guys are going to be good pros?
In the second round, you're going to be lucky if any of those guys is there in the second round when you pick.
Good old quarterback inflation, right?
I'm just saying you'll be because people say, well, there might only be 4 because the common opinion. Now, you remember, I'm not on the inside anymore. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm doing this from afar. I'm not wired in to like a lot of other people are. So the common opinion is that Caleb Williams is the first guy, and either Jaden Daniels or Drake May is second or third.
Mm-hmm.
That's the common opinion. And then everyone seemed to think J.J. McCarthy is the next guy to go. Well, that leaves Penix and Nix, and all they did was win at a high level, playing great, both of them.
The only guy Knicks couldn't beat was Penix.
But both those guys played great. They both played great. So you're looking at those guys. Well, okay, Penix has a little injury history, which based off of the subject we're having, is a little bit of a question mark. But watch him play. Now, granted, he had probably one of the greatest groups of wide receivers you could ever be playing with, too, that he's throwing to. I might be able to complete passes if I was playing at Washington this year. But that being said, how could you not like the talent that those guys have? And people say, well, you better take one this year because next year's class won't be as good. Remember now, I have a kid who coaches in college. Mm-hmm. And I'm on, if there's anything I do know, is because his quarterback is one of those guys next year. I mean, next year's class is going to be loaded again. And it's a good thing when you need a quarterback. You hope not to be drafted this high very often.
Tell me about it.
And you want to take the shot when you have one, right?
So
I'm with you, Charlie.
Do I believe they have a greater need for this current team at wide receiver? Yes. Do I think they have a greater need at offensive lineman? Yes. But with that being said, if one of those top guys is available, jump all over.
Giants Huddle Podcast is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day to every day, Citizens is made ready for Giant fans with insights, guidance, and solutions. Learn more at citizensbanks.com.
Okay, Charlie, let me flop it to the running game for a minute because it's kind of a two-pronged question. You mentioned that you asked Joe Shane what he's going to do with Saquon Barkley. We know that there are supposedly a lot of second and third round running backs in this draft. And so many people have devalued running backs and said you can go by committee. It's, to go with the workhorse superstar guy is not the way to go anymore. What would you advise Joe to do, not only with Barkley, but in terms of filling up his running back room?
Well, it starts with trying to get a deal done with Saquon. I mean, any Giant fan would be remiss if they thought that let's get rid of Saquon and save that money. I mean, who in their right mind would think that? He's their best player. It's not close for second.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's not another offensive player on their team that's even in his ballpark. I mean, he's different. Now, we talk about injuries again. We talk about age at the running back position. I mean, Joe and Brian and the powers to be will have a number that they're willing to pay. And Saquon has a number that he's looking to get. And if they can come up with a marriage, fine. But if you can't, I mean, life moves on. That's just the way it goes. And the good thing for the Giants and every other team is if it didn't work out with Saquon, and I hope it does. But if there's a bunch of free agent running backs.
1 million.
That too.
That you can get a lot cheaper than you can get Saquon for. Now, they're maybe not as good, okay, but they're still good. They're not as good, but they're still good. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of them. You look at, I can give you 12 of them that could be starting running backs that are all going to be free. 12 of them. And I can go deeper than that, but I could give you 12 of them. And I can give you guys that, I'll give you an example of one. Devin Singletary.
Right.
Okay, Devin Singletary played great for the Texans this year.
Played really well.
They had him on the cheap because he was a free agent. Buffalo had let him go. They had him on the cheap. He cost, $5 million or something like that. Well, you say, only $5 million. You do cartwheels right now to have a running back for $5 million that played as good as he did.
Sure.
So I think the Texans would be dumb to not get a deal done with him. But I'm just using him as a guy. That's not Eckler. That's not Henry. That's not Jacobs. That's not Saquon. I didn't give you any of the first names that rattle out of the box. I'm just giving you a guy that's a quality a quality starter in the NFL. And the whole thing is, I just give you one. I could give you a half dozen of guys like
Zach
that.
Moss, another guy, right, who had a lot of success in Indianapolis this year.
A half dozen of them.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, if it didn't work out with Saquon, before you even go take one in the draft, there's guys there that could help lessen the hit from him going.
Hey, Giant fans, score a taste touchdown with Hellman's, the official mayonnaise of the New York Giants, joined by Charlie Weis here at the NFL Combine. Charlie, you mentioned the Giants have a need a wide receiver. How do you sort through the top of this wide receiver class? Different flavors in terms of Harrison and Odunze, then you have the smaller guy in Neighbors. What do you think of those three guys that obviously you've seen play a bunch of college football this year?
Well, I think the class is loaded. And you could look at, I know Brian Dable very well. He had the room next to mine for a bunch of years as the receiver coach. So here was the telephone call to Dable. Hey, Dable, get in here. I mean, that was the telephone call. But I know that when you got a frontline guy, you take the best guy and then you do what he does. Mm-hmm. See, too many people want to do it the opposite way.
Squeeze a guy into your system,
let's
right?
see whether he fits. If he's a great player, you figure out what to do with him.
The Parcells theory.
And, that's what you do.
Yeah.
As a former offensive guy, do you prefer the bigger guy that maybe has a little less separation or the smaller guy that is a little bit more explosive and can separate more? Or do you not care?
We won with Deion Branch and Troy Brown. And we won with guys that other people didn't think were that good, but they played great for us. Mm-hmm. Give me a good player, and we'll figure out what to do with them.
All right, I got to ask you to step back from the trees just a bit now, Charlie, because everybody will always say your skill position guys can't do very much if your offensive line can't protect and can't block. There are those people who will say the Giants have to address the offensive line at 6 and forget about all these other fancy players. Well, what do you say to them?
They have to address the offensive line. They don't have to address the offensive line at 6. Mm-hmm. Would it be nice if they took one of these front line, take Alt from Notre Dame? Stud. Yeah. Be a stud tackle for you for a bunch of years, and the other tackle on the other side pretty good. Now you got 2 tackles. You already took care of the tackle position for the next 5 to 10 years. Would that be an attribute for the Giants? You bet you it would. But when you're picking, you rate these guys based off of not just what position they play, but you rate them by how good they are. And if one guy's rated an 8 and another guy's rated a 7.5, guess what? Take the 8.
Yeah. As an offensive coach, how much of a concern for you or worry for you was it to draft a guy that played left tackle his entire college career, and then in the NFL you want him to move to the right side? Is that something that you made a big deal out of, or is that something you think with the right coaching a player can make that adjustment pretty quickly?
Well, you can't just ask that question on paper. You have to have watched the kid.
How about a guy like Alt, for example?
Okay, but you have to have watched him. When you watch him play, and then you talk to his position coach, not to the head coach, because they'll lie. Head coaches all lie. Okay, but the position coach and the strength coach, they don't lie. Right. So when you ask them what are their strengths and weaknesses, they're going to tell you the strengths and weaknesses. And some guys can transition from one side to the other, and some guys can't. So your job is to figure out whether or not, how tough the transition would be and whether or not you think you can get it done. And like I said, very often you can, but sometimes it just isn't going to work out.
Charlie, you mentioned you were next to Brian Dable's office for some time there in New England. What can you tell us about how Brian has navigated his first 2 seasons as head coach of the Giants, a playoff season, and then obviously one that was disappointing?
Well, the biggest mistake he made was winning his first year.
Okay.
Well, they overachieved the first year. And then, having been a Giant fan my whole life, growing up in New Jersey, once you won, now they expect you to be better the next year.
Expectations.
And even though the schedule was 10 times harder the second year than the first year, people don't cut you any slack for that.
Not New Jersey, though.
So by winning so much the first year, they overachieved. They were well ahead of schedule, and then last year, between the schedule and the quarterback injuries, it was a step back for sure, but it was a step back with logic. There's logical reasons why they stepped back. So now year 3 is going to be a critical year for Brian and their staff. You just went through a big transition on your staff. You got a bunch of new guys. You got new defensive guys. You got a new special teams coach. Okay, you've transitioned on. You have a lot of transition on your staff. Okay, but what you do have is you got the same offensive coordinator. Okay, and the same head coach who's a very, very, very bright offensive mind. Now, I know he wants to play that game. I just want to run the team. But that's a bunch of garbage, as you know it. I mean, these coaches, you have a forte. You have to make sure that forte isn't staying in your office. It gets moved to room so that your ideas and your thought methodology matriculates through the whole organization.
Giant fans love a winner. It's why they love Citizens, named a 2022 Best Bank in the U.S. by The Banker as the official bank of the Giants and sponsor of the Huddle. Citizens is made ready for fans of Big Blue. Learn more at citizensbank.com.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New you moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Charlie, you mentioned the new defensive coordinator. You've been on a bunch of coaching staffs when new coaches come in. What is that adjustment going to be like with the new defensive coordinator coming in? How do these conversations work that are happening now as the defensive coordinator talks to personnel people about the type of players that he wants, the type of schemes they want to run, and then how quickly can this defense get revved up and playing where it needs to as it kind of gets taught for the first time in the building?
Well, start off, he came from Mike Vrabel. Mm-hmm. One of my favorites of all time. Mm-hmm. So you know about his toughness, and you know about Vrabel's meticulous. So therefore, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of the same thing. Tough guys that are meticulous, and you lose a high-profile defensive coordinator, but I guarantee you, half the players are happy he's there, and half the players are happy he's gone. It's just the way players are. But when a new guy comes in, everyone's in love with the new guy. You walk in the door, everyone's in love with him. And you know how that goes. As the year goes on, people are going to, hey, this is really good for me. And for other guys, this isn't working out. I wish Wink was still here. It's just the nature of players. It's the way it is. But I do know he comes from Vrabel. And I shouldn't have to tell you anything else. Yeah. Because if you know Mike Vrabel like I do, both as a player, as a coach, I mean, I got nothing but praise to say about Mike Vrabel, and I would think that you should expect that same toughness and meticulous nature on defense to be brought to, well, they don't even call it the Meadowlands anymore. What do they call it now?
MetLife Stadium.
Come on. Come
Proud
on.
Sponsor of the New York
Giants
Giants.
Stadium. Correct. When it comes to Giants Stadium, because we all know it's still Giants Stadium. They can call it whatever they want.
So, Charlie, it sounds to me, from all that you have just said over the last 20 minutes or so that we've been here, that you don't maybe think the Giants are as far away from being back to a playoff-sniffing team as maybe some other people do, because you yourself said there were a lot of reasons why last year happened the way it did.
Well, plus the bump in the salary cap really helped every organization, but it certainly helped the Giants. Because now all of a sudden the salary cap's $30 million higher than you were expecting it to be. You thought, well, maybe it'd be $225. That would be great. Well, it's $255. I mean, that extra $30 million gives you some room to wiggle now, and wiggle room is what this league's all about. You got to figure out within that cap, what can we do? How can we solve this problem? It's problem solving.
Yeah.
It's personnel problem solving, and that's why Joe Shane gets paid the big money.
All right, final question. We talked a lot about the draft, free agency wise. Do you think the Giants need to focus in on the interior of that offensive line, that guard spot? Is it trying to fill out the defense to match what Shane Bowen wants? What do you think their focus should be in free agency?
Finding guys that can fit your financial situation. Finding good guys that are team guys that can fit, regardless of how much you spend or how little you spend. Find guys that fit what you do. So, if you have needs inside in the interior, you have needs both inside and outside on the offensive line. But I'm like, okay, if we get this guy, what does that happen with the rest of them? Because one of the things that I've talked about often since I've been out of coaching is people undervalue chemistry, and especially on the offensive line. I mean, because that's a 5-man group plus all their backups. That's 5 guys playing as one. And I think chemistry, is important. So when you bring guys in, how are we going to piecemeal this all together to make this work so that we could be better?
Real quick before you go, Charlie, Evan Neal at right tackle. We talked about offensive line before, but a lot of people are saying, well, maybe he should move to guard. Joe Shane says we still think he's a tackle, but that impacts what you're going to acquire, whether it's free agency or draft, whether or not you think that Neal will be the answer at right tackle.
Well, I think if you draft a tackle, you know what the answer is.
That tells you a lot.
So you can't find tackles. You can find interior guys. You can't find tackles.
Yep.
So until you get him replaced at tackle, he can't be a guard. I also personally think he's better suited at guard than tackle.
Why?
Well, no, I just think without me going into technicalities, because I'll let the Giant organization answer it because I'm not speaking for the Giants.
Right.
I just think he struggled mightily at tackle, and I think he's got a lot of athleticism and came from a program that's used to winning, and he played very well when he was in college. So you don't throw a guy like that away.
Right.
I mean, so what do? Well, if he can't get that done, you either let him go or move him somewhere where he can thrive. And I think that there'd be a lot less pressure on him if he played inside because you get a lot more help. As an interior offensive lineman, you get a lot. You got help from your inside, and you got help from your outside,
And less space too, right?
Okay, well, when you're on tackle, you're on your own. You are on the edge. It's you and nobody out there. And sometimes you got some tight end that doesn't want to chip block, or you got some running back that won't cut block. I mean, so a lot of times it's you one-on-one versus these guys that they're paying a lot of money on the edge to come off the edge right there. So. It'll be interesting, but I think that, let's face it, there's a lot of holes that need to be filled. I think that the first answer is you got to figure out what are you going to do. You got 2 top flight guys that are both. You got to answer what's going to happen with Barkley and McKinney.
Yeah,
because I think that they're 2 studs. They're 2 of the best of what they do in the league, and once they're either there or not there, you'll know how much cap room you have left to do other deals. Yep. But you better start with your own guys because I always believe you better figure out your own guys first, what you're going to do with your own guys before you worry about what you're doing with the other guys.
Charlie, thank you so much for doing this. We
it,
appreciate it.
Charlie.
Before we say goodbye, tell the folks where they can find you and anything else you want to let the folks know about what you're doing.
I'm with your Bob Papa.
There you go.
Okay, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on NFL Sirius NFL Radio.
Airing it out, correct?
Well, airing it out is the name only because we used to be the opening drive, but they moved us to the second slot. So we're airing it out with and it's usually me and Bob when he's not doing the Giants or doing PGA Senior Golf, when he graces me with his presence. But Monday through Friday from 10 to noon, and usually we're not big on taking phone calls because usually between the 2 of us, we got enough stuff to talk about.
For sure.
Well, I'm going to talk to Lexi. When Bob's not there, I'm going to make sure we get Lance in there with you as much as we possibly can. Okay?
No, don't do that. Don't. You don't have to do that. I know that you guys would rather have him over here. So, I like to wallow away in anonymity now that I'm no one wants me to coach.
I'm throwing
anymore,
a flag on you for unnecessary roughness.
Super Bowl champion Charlie Weis.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. We'll see you next time.
Allstate wants to remind fans that mayhem is everywhere, like when the tailgate party shows up at your house after the big win. Everything's great until the hot plate gets too hot for the tablecloth. Now your kitchen's up in smoke. And if you don't have the right home insurance coverage, the cost to fix this could sideline your savings. So switch to Allstate, save money, and get protected from mayhem like this. Not available in every state based on coverage selected, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Savings vary.
You deserve to treat yourself, so turn your tax refund into a U fund and give yourself a Straight Talk Wireless Extended Silver Unlimited plan and get a new Samsung Galaxy A14 on them. You can get a great everyday value on wireless with Straight Talk's Unlimited plan starting at $25 a line per month for 4 lines. You'll save so much you'll be enjoying that refund all year long. It's the refund that keeps on refunding. Find Straight Talk at straighttalk.com or at your local Walmart store.
Taxes and fees not included. Offer valid through 4/14/24 while supplies last. Online only. Must purchase a Straight Talk Extended Silver Unlimited plan to qualify. Limit of 5 phones per customer. Family plan discount with 4 lines, all on the Silver Unlimited plan. Not combinable with auto pay discount.